This clip is an EEG recording of the subject shown in figure 33, made earlier on that same day. And what you're looking at is the typical recording setup described in the book. The signals are from 21 electrodes across the head, with the electrode labels shown in the left-hand column. Those at the top from the front of the head, those at the bottom from the back of the head. The letters F, C, T, P and O refer to frontal, central, temporal, parietal and occipital positions on the head. The top bar is time in seconds. The recording begins with the meditator relaxed, eyes closed but not meditating. This continues for about 2 minutes to give a baseline to compare to the later meditating condition. The intensity of the signals is low, about 10 to 30 microvolts intensity peak to peak, which is typical of the resting state. I'm now going to speed up the playback from here for the rest of the eyes closed condition. Here there are some sporadic spindles occurring, probably caused by the meditator anticipating and maybe impatient for the cue to begin meditation, which has not been given yet. The cue finally comes here after 2.5 minutes non-meditating, and the spindles now begin to develop more strongly, as you can see, predominantly around the back of the head. In this yellow highlighted segment, the spindles are prolific and well defined, very similar to figure 33, which is from later in this person's practice the same day. If I select one of the electrodes here, we can see the characteristic wave packet shape of the spindles. In fact, there are at least 2 rhythms involved, the inner fast rhythm and the outer slower envelope rhythm, which is something maybe worthy of future analysis. I can now show the spectra for this whole segment, where each of these plots shows the intensity against frequency for each electrode on the head, with clear peaks at about 10 Hz for those at the back of the head. This frequency 10 Hz is the midpoint of the alpha band, which is the signature rhythm of sensory consciousness, and the spindles indicate it's this rhythm which has been disrupted as meditators begin to disengage from sensory consciousness. The 3D view here confirms the focus of activity at the back of the head, with a tendency to extend forwards, not very strongly, along the midline. This example has shown spindles focused around the back of the head, and in fact all the meditators who showed spindles showed some activity at the back of the head. However, some also showed more widespread activity over much larger areas of the head, and therefore across the brain. And in this next short example, we can see this happening for another meditator in 2014. This is the same setup as for the previous subject, except for this recording there are now 31 electrodes rather than 21. This meditator has just changed from the eyes closed resting state to begin to develop towards the first jhana. Spindles soon begin to develop at the back of the head, but very quickly spread over the rest of the head. And I'll speed up the replay to show you this. Until here, the spindles are very much more prolific across most of the head. If I select one of the electrodes, You could see the wave packet form of the spindles better, perhaps not as well defined as the previous clip, but still typical of these meditation spindles. And again, as with the previous clip, I can show the spectra for this highlighted segment, where the plots of intensity against frequency for all 31 electrodes now show peaks at slightly lower frequencies than the previous example, 8 to 10 Hz rather than around 10 Hz, the central frequency. And there is a discussion in the book as to what significance this might have. The 3D plot here shows a broad high intensity near the back of the head, extending towards the right temporal lobe, but also you can see extending across a much larger area of the head. Spindles then represent a key stage for meditators beginning to weaken their attachment to the habits of sensory consciousness, affecting and disrupting the attention networks that support that default consciousness. I believe the difference between these two examples illustrates the subtly different ways individuals use their brains to aim towards similar outcomes, in this case the first Rūpa Jhāna. Some may be unconsciously drawn to focus their disengagement from sensory consciousness on the subject I/EYE networks of the occipital visual cortex, while others might instinctively attempt to blanket suppress all sensory consciousness activity across much of the head. There is a more detailed discussion on this in the book.